Isn't it kind of weird to think that we're now all living in a world forever in which Kyle Kuzma is an NBA champion? That's kind of weird to think about. Anyway, welcome back everybody. My name is Sucker, and in today's video, we're of course going to be talking about what is next for the Miami Heat, and then tomorrow we'll be talking about what is next for the LA Lakers as the NBA season is officially over. Congratulations to the LA Lakers for a well-earned NBA title, and also congratulations to the Miami Heat, who we're going to be talking about in today's video for one of the more incredible postseason runs that we have seen in a long time. For a team to come into the postseason as a 5 seed with as weird of a playoffs as this was, and to go on this run. And if they were healthy, I think they could have given the Lakers a much better series, and even the fact that they pushed it to 6 games, given everything that happened to them in that series, certainly is impressive. And now there's a lot of decisions to be made moving forward for this Heat team, because a lot of the attention, and rightfully so, is being paid to what is this team going to do in 2021 when there's a lot of potential free agents available, and they've set themselves up well to potentially be successful in that off season. But I think a lot of people are kind of glossing over the fact that there are a lot of important decisions to be made this off season as well. And we're going to get to the 2021 stuff, of course, but I think it's really important to look at in this whole scope of what is next for the Heat, how they can set themselves up for success next year as well as the 2021 offseason, and that is what we're going to be talking about today. But really quickly before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload basically every single day, and leaving a like rating is a great way to let me know that you're enjoying the content, and it helps it out a ton on YouTube as well. And you can also come hang out with me on Twitch over at Spolo_TD, twitch.tv/Spolo_TD. That is, we're having a lot of fun over there talking about trades, talking about the playoffs. And now that there's so much off-season and draft stuff going on, that's gonna be a lot of the conversation over there. It's super fun to just hang out. There's a nice little community of people that aren't just there to talk to me, but they're there to talk amongst each other. And it's just a really cool environment. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend you come hang out with us on Twitch. But with that said, let's go ahead and get started with this kind of what's next look for the Miami Heat. So as I talked about in the intro, 2021 is this big focus for this team, right? But I think it's also really important that they make sure that they capitalize on the run that they just had by having a successful season next year as well. And it's pretty clear at this point with this roster, they're one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference in this particular postseason, the best team in the Eastern Conference. But there's no guarantee that they're going to have the same roster back next year, and it's kind of strange how much potential turnover there could be for this roster this offseason, given how good they were this year. So Goran Dragic, Jay Crowder, and then to a lesser extent, guys like Myers Leonard, Solomon Hill, and Derrick Jones Jr. are all free agents this offseason for the Miami Heat. And on one hand, that's kind of a positive because they've only got about $82 million in payroll, assuming that Kelly Olynyk picks up his option, which he's going to, which is, a nice chunk of cap space to have. But at the same time, this is a group that worked so well together, and specifically Dragic and Crowder are really big pieces to this team. But it's not as simple as just saying, hey, let's throw a ton of money at these guys, let's bring them back, let's run it back with this group, because it's a stated goal of this team to be big players in 2021 free agency. And up to this point, the focus has been on what are they going to do about Goran Dragic. Ideally, they're going to give him this huge 1-year contract. But Jay Crowder is a really important piece for them as well. And is he someone that's going to be accepting of that similar situation of the 1-year deal? I'm not really convinced how that's going to go down. So ideally for the Heat, as you're looking at their payroll numbers, they bring back as many of these guys as possible on 1-year deals, so they don't cut into their 2021 cap space. They have a ton of space this offseason to give to these guys and to re-sign these players with. So it's not an issue of potentially being up against the luxury tax. They can give Dragic and Crowder and even some of those other guys huge numbers to return if they want to incentivize them to take the 1-year deal rather than the multi-year deal. But ultimately, these guys are free agents and they can go somewhere else if they want to, which would be a pretty significant hit to this team's competitiveness for next year, whether it's Dragic or it is Crowder. So those are two really interesting cases to take a look at. And again, we understand the ideal situation where they bring back as many of these guys as possible. They pick somebody in the draft, and there should be internal improvement for this roster, and really nobody should be worse. Jimmy Butler is over 30 years old, but he's going to be fine. Dragic, unless the injury that he had in the playoffs it nags him a lot more than it seems like it's going to moving forward, he should be good, assuming they bring him back. And then you've got the internal improvement of guys like Bam, Robinson, Tyler Hero as well. And so as long as they can bring those guys back, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be competitive next year, which of course helps their free agency case. But having said that, as we transition to what I'm sure a lot of people have more interest in, and that is the 2021 offseason, I still think that this is a team that is going to prioritize the 2021 cap space that they've been trying to build for a couple of years now over, bringing back Dragic or Crowder on multi-year deals. I still think that that is the priority for this team. And if it really came down to it, I think that they would look for other options on one-year deals and let those two guys walk before they would sign either of them to significant multi-year deals. Because at the end of the day, the ceiling is just higher with this group if they're able to bring in a max player in the summer 2021. And I still think that that is the goal that they're moving towards. And as you look at their payroll for that offseason, essentially, they're just going to have Jimmy Butler on the payroll and Tyler Herro's rookie deal as well. Really not much money at all, assuming that they turn down Iguodala's team option, which I would imagine that they will. And that opens up a lot of possibilities for this team that offseason, depending on how well they play this year, how competitive they look, how well it looks like a potential max player could fit in there. And of course, it's Miami, it's Pat Riley, it's Eric Spoelstra. They have this whole culture thing where they were, free agency threats even before they went on this playoff run. So that's going to be an interesting thing to keep an eye on, but you also have to pay attention to the fact that both Duncan Robinson and Bam Adebayo are going to need new contracts that offseason, and I don't think that it's an overstatement to say that Bam Adebayo could be a max level, a rookie max level extension player by the time we get to the 2021 offseason, which doesn't necessarily, take away a lot of their spending power in that offseason, but I think it's more likely that we're looking at a one max player type of situation here in Miami when you account for those extensions. You've already got Jimmy Butler on a max deal. Bam Adebayo could be on a rookie max, and Duncan Robinson is going to be worth a pretty good raise as well, certainly more than the, I think, 1.5 that he's making next season. So those are going to be two players to keep an eye on in terms of extension candidates with both Bam and Robinson and how much money they get and how that impacts their free agency stuff, but they're still absolutely going to have space for at least one max guy. I think it's unlikely that they're going to have space for two, but that's not the end of the world, because I could see a situation where maybe Giannis doesn't happen, or maybe one of the big time free agents doesn't happen for them, but someone like Victor Oladipo wants to go to Miami, or something along those lines, where they have this very clear idea of the kind of players that they want, and they're not going to mess with this whole Heat culture thing that they have going on by bringing in guys that they don't think fit that. And I think Oladipo is a guy that could potentially fit that if he wants to leave Indiana or wherever he ends up by the time he's a free agent in 2021. So I don't necessarily think that it's a Giannis or bust type situation for Miami. I think obviously if Giannis wants to go there, they're going to sign him, right? But I still at this point believe that Giannis is going to be returning to Milwaukee for a variety of reasons that we can get into a different time. But they can either go after one of the big names in 2021. They can go after a couple of, not quite as big names, maybe not quite max guys if they want to keep that thing that they've had with this group where they have, a ton of different options on the floor at the same time. Heck, they could bring back Dragic and Crowder, whoever's on one-year deals at that point if they wanted to. They have plenty of cap space as well to make other moves, whether it be trades or otherwise. The only thing they're missing is they don't have their first round pick in 2021. That's it's been owed to a couple of different teams at this point. I don't even know where it's at now, but I know that Miami doesn't have it. And so that, hinders their ability to make trades a little bit. When you look at their payroll, when you're going into 2021 with that much of a clean sheet, with the ability to re-sign Adebayo and Robinson, assuming they're not signed to extensions by that point, which I'm assuming they will be, honestly. You've got Tyler Herro, you've got Jimmy Butler, you've got that core four of players that work well together, and the ability to add a max player. I think it's certainly an enticing spot. Now, does it end up happening for them? I think it's unlikely that Miami gets one of those big time guys, at least right now. I mean, it's so far away at this point, but I don't think that Giannis is leaving, at least not right now. And the other quote unquote big time free agents in that offseason have kind of already made their move, the Kawhi and the PG thing, which can get its own video at some point. Those guys already made the choice to be in LA. That's what they wanted to do this whole time. And yeah, the season didn't go the way they wanted it to, but that doesn't mean that they're just now all of a sudden going to go to Miami after 2 years when LA has been their stated goal for so long. So I think that maybe we're overhyping the 2021 class a little bit if you take Giannis, Kawhi, and PG out of the equation, which I think is a fair thing to do at this point. So I think it's more likely that they make some moves in the free agency of 2021 and they bring in some guys, but I don't think that you should start making graphics of Jimmy Butler, Giannis, Bam, Robinson, and Tyler Herro. I don't necessarily think that is the case right now, but still the Miami Heat have had an incredible season, incredible postseason run, and have set themselves up really, really well, almost better than you could have possibly imagined they would have a couple years ago. And that trade for Jimmy Butler last offseason has become so much more impactful than we ever thought that it would be. The fact that it was a straight up trade between them with Josh Richardson and Jimmy Butler is kind of incredible to think about at this point. He had two of the best finals performances I've seen in a long time in that final series against LA. And it's going to be really interesting to see what they do, because I do think that they can be, a top 2 or 3 team in the East next year with the confidence of this championship run, assuming that they stay healthy, assuming they bring back Dragic and Crowder. And I know that's a lot of ifs, but if there's a front office, if there's a coaching staff, if there's an organization, a group that I feel confident in right now moving forward in terms of making the correct decisions, in terms of playing well together, in terms of building on the momentum that they built for themselves this season, I don't think there's a single team in the entire league that I'm more confident in their ability to do that than the Miami Heat. So they're in a fantastic situation. Whether they get the max guys in 2021 or not, who knows? That's going to be a huge storyline for the next however many months, whenever the 2021 offseason is, whenever next season starts, which is, of course, a whole nother wrinkle to this, and the salary cap and all kinds of things. It's so difficult to predict these types of things. But I think in the end of the day, the point of this video and the takeaway is Miami's 2020 offseason is a bigger deal than you might think, because everybody's focusing on 2021. And I wouldn't anticipate in this moment them getting one of the guys in 2021, because I think for the most part, those guys are going to stay. But even if that's not the case, this isn't a boom or bust situation. They have the opportunity to bring back this group for next year, potentially make another run at the title, or just continue to bring that group back year after year after year because they have the young pieces on the roster, or get one of the big guys in 2021, or get a couple of middle tier guys in 2021 and still be really good for the entirety of Jimmy Butler's contract there in Miami. So fantastic situation, a interesting one, but one that I think has very little chance of failing the Miami Heat in terms of them being one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference over the next couple of seasons. And yeah, there you have it. That is going to be the end of today's video, and I thank you all very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.